Welcome to Brothers RC. This video is about the adventure of upgrading this WPl-c64. As you can see, it doesn't look much like the stock truck I bought a couple weeks ago, and it definitely does not perform like it either. This video will be a bit longer than usual, because I really want you to see how much fun can be had with a simple, inexpensive truck like this one. There is lots of good information and fun to be had in this video, so please watch till the end. Here's a couple clips to keep you interested, then on with the video. And when you're climbing, that keeps it from unloading. As you can see, the front shocks didn't unload and it climbed right up. Man, I love it over here. If it makes it through this stuff today, then it's probably good to go. Welcome back to O Brothers RC. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and upgrade this WPL. Now, I'm not going to really spend a lot of money on this truck. I already had these wheels and tires laying around, and they fit this thing so darn good that I'm just going to go ahead and throw them on there. But as far as everything else goes, I'm pretty much going to leave it stock. However, I am going to do some trimming on the fenders. I think I'm going to remove this roll bar as well. And underneath here, there's a few free mods I'm going to do to make this thing perform a little better. As you can see, the wheels and tires have greatly improved the look of this truck. Man, it just looks so good. But these wheels and tires not only look good, they are way softer than the originals and just a tiny bit bigger. So they'll definitely add some clearance as well as a massive amount of grip. And as you can see there, it's also widened the stance, which will add a little bit more capability that way as well. Well, at least I hope they do anyway. Because to be honest, I'm not quite sure that they're even going to work. They seem to fit okay, and I'm only getting rubbing in the back. But until I get them outside and run them around a little bit, I'm not going to truly know if they work well or not. So before I do any more mods to the truck, I'm going to go ahead and pop these other two on. Then I'm going to take it outside and run it around to make sure these wheels and tires don't cause any unforeseen problems. If you didn't see my last video on this truck, I showed you what you'll need to do to get these type of wheels to work. I went over the fact that the WPL trucks have a 5mm hex, and 1.0 and 1.3 wheels mostly all have a 7mm hex. So you got to order yourself some of these little adapters here. They just slide right on to the 5mm hex axle. Then you can pop this wheel right on there. Then you just pop your crappy little Phillips head screw back in there. And theoretically, they should work fine, but I've never used them, so we're going to find out here in just a minute. Now that they're installed, let's go ahead and take this thing outside and find out if they actually work with the truck. All right, so this is just the landscaping creek in my front yard, and I'm just going to use it to test out the suspension and the tires here and see what kind of rubbing we get and see if the motor has trouble pushing these tires. This is not a strong motor, but seems to do all right with the other tires. I can hear some rubbing there. Definitely getting some rubbing in the back. It's not too bad in the front though, and I'm definitely getting better traction. The motor seems to be all right with these tires. I don't feel like it's struggling any more than it was with the stock tires on there. But with the motor being as weak as it is, I definitely need to eliminate any rubbing, because that's definitely going to take away power from the motor. This thing really is pretty fun to drive. Just for shiggles, I'm going to see if it'll climb this steep rock here. Get a good idea of what the weight distribution on this thing is. Whoop, whoop. Yeah, we're already having trouble here. Okay, so the weight distribution on this thing is definitely biased to the back. With that big heavy battery back there, it's definitely wanting to flip backwards. That's good downhill though. Definitely got to eliminate that rubbing. Other than that, I'm not really having any other trouble. All right, I am super stoked. That was fun. This thing is awesome and it's functioning really well. Aside from some rubbing here on this back fender, it did really well. The motor handled these tires not too bad. I'd like to put a different motor in this, but I just don't want to spend a lot of time or money on this thing as of yet. And since the motor's weak and a little underpowered, I definitely don't want to add any more weight to this thing. This battery is pretty heavy and it should be moved forward somewhere, preferably inside the hood, but I'm not sure. I think the ESC is in there, so we'll have to figure something out. I'm also going to remove this roll bar. That's a little bit of weight off the back. Then, as I mentioned, I'm going to shave these fenders. I'm also going to come underneath here and shave some of this pumpkin. There's a lot of catch points here that are catching on rocks and causing trouble. As well as these C-hubs on the front, they can be shaved down. And that'll allow the rocks to slide along the bottom better. Maybe even shave this ridge on the transmission here. Possibly shave a little bit of this too. It's just barely catching there. And a little bit of shaving here. I would also like to permanently lower it a little. So I'm going to try to cut the springs and capture them. And if I can't capture them, just cutting them will bring the ride height down. And that'll be a great way to lower the center of gravity. Once I'm done, we'll take it back outside and see how it performs. As you can see here, I've knocked down the corner of this C-hub. You don't want to take off too much material or you're going to make this weak. But knocking off this corner here should be just fine. Shouldn't weaken it up or anything. And that's definitely going to help with this thing not hanging up on rocks. I've also rounded off the pumpkin here a little bit. And in the back here, I've done the same, rounded the pumpkin off. I even took a little bit off of these mount points on the axles as well. This will definitely help to keep the rocks from hanging up on here. Okay, I got the roll bar removed and I got the bottom shaved. Now the harder part is going to be shaving these fenders without screwing them up. I've got a heavy grit sanding drum on the Dremel here. If you don't have a Dremel and you're trying to modify these small trucks or even the bigger trucks, you're really doing yourself a disservice. You need to get a Dremel. It makes everything so much easier and faster. Okay, so I roughed this side in with that heavy sanding drum and I'm barely getting any rubbing here now. I got the front roughed in there as well. I think I'll take this little corner off of here, but other than that, I think we're good. So now I'll switch to a much lighter grit on the sanding drum and make sure I don't take off too much material as I'm smoothing it out. Smoothing it out is definitely going to help to keep the tire from catching, if it does touch. All right, now that all the shaving's done, I want to mess with these shocks a little bit. And what I want to do is I want to get this thing to ride at a lower height. So I think I'm going to cut some coils out of the spring here. Then I'm going to glue the spring to the spring cup and it'll ride at a more compressed height. That should really improve the center of gravity and its capability. I'm also going to go ahead and put some heavy grease inside of there, and that'll slow down its rebound and make the truck less jiggly, which will of course improve its capability as well. So I want the shock to ride about halfway in there. That means I need to take off 1, 2, 3 coils. Just get my clippers and give it a snip. Take the shock retainer off and get rid of those coils. Now I just take some pliers and tweak that spring until it's touching itself. Then it'll sit right on that shock retainer again. Then you get yourself some heavy duty grease and you pack some down in there. And you don't want to use too much. You're going to start off a little bit, add some more as you need it. And that worked great. Really slowed down the rebound. Now you don't want to use oil for this because it'll just leak out and it won't do you any good. But that heavy duty grease really works good. Something else I just figured out is if you can't get your spring on the bottom to bend around correctly, just flip the spring over and put the cut part at the top. This big retainer up here will hold it in place. And then the nice factory end can go down around the bottom retainer. Okay, so now we've gone from this ride height to this ride height. You can see how much lower it sits. The jacked up look looks pretty dang cool, but it's definitely taken away from its capability. And it really should perform a lot better lowered down. Fingers crossed. I also removed the snorkel and I'm gonna go ahead and fill these holes and then just hit them with a white marker, just one little dot. You know, I definitely won't notice very much. That way I don't have to repaint the whole truck, although I do have a paint scheme in mind for this thing. All right, it's pretty much done. I did everything I wanted to do except move the battery. And I realized I'm gonna have to remove the body to move the battery. So if I'm gonna remove the body, I'm gonna paint the truck when I do that. And there's just not enough time in this video. I think the modifications I did though will greatly add to the capability of the truck. And these were all just simple modifications that anyone should be able to perform. So now let's take this thing out and see what these modifications have done to improve the capability of this truck. All right, so I took the truck outside real quick just to see if it was functioning properly. And on the big climb, it was still unloading and flipping backwards. So I decided to go ahead and capture the springs on the front shocks. What you do to capture the springs is you go ahead and cut the spring about in half so that the shock is almost all the way compressed. Then I take this E600 and I put a dab on each side of the spring, top and bottom. And that captures the spring so that there's reverse tension on your shock and it pulls itself back in. And when you're climbing, that keeps it from unloading. I do this on all my stock SCX24 shocks and it works killer. And as you can see with that grease in there, it's nice and smooth and rebounding perfectly. So here's a look at the difference it makes in climbing. All right, let's take a look at the difference in its climbing capability here. And earlier it had zero chance of even getting on this rock, let alone climbing up it. As you can see, the front shocks didn't unload and it climbed right up. All right, I gotta do a couple chores, then I'm gonna take this thing out to my favorite trailing spot. It's got some hard obstacles, but it's a really cool place to just take a trail truck and have some fun. This hill is an awesome hill to run, and it goes for about a half a mile up there. The view is pretty insane from over here as well. So it's super good for exercise, but it's also really awesome to drive trucks out here. So let's put this thing to the test on some of these smaller obstacles in this trail truck side and see how it does. Suspension's working killer. It is super cold right now, and that definitely makes that grease a little thicker than I like, but it's working just fine. As you can see, this thing actually has a decent slow crawl. It's not bad. It's a little underpowered, so you got to bump it up some stuff, but it's really not a bad slow crawl. And now that the suspension is good and it's not bouncing around, You can see it performs pretty dang good. Especially for a truck that out of the box, you know, can't really perform much at all. Getting into some pretty gnarly stuff right here. No problem. The only question is, how long will this truck last without breaking, especially if I'm driving it, you know, on rough stuff like this. And I got to tell you, if it makes it through this stuff today, then it's probably good to go. Just trooping through this stuff, no problem. Nice. So I spent 55 bucks on the truck, and then the wheels and tires I had laying around, but they cost about 35 bucks, you know, for both. So I'm looking at about 90 bucks into this truck, you know, maybe 100 after tax. And I gladly pay that for this thing. It is freaking awesome. The looks alone are probably worth that. This thing has a nice top end as well, and I really like it. I mean, I really like this truck. It's just nice to take a break and work on something simple, and it's really nice when it turns out good, you know, when it turns out capable and looks really good and drives really good. I'm freaking stoked on this thing. There are just so many obstacles out here. It's freaking just awesome. Like that. Freaking awesome. So if you want yours to perform like this, just do the mods that I showed you. And I'll put the link to these tires and wheels in the description, because they perform really well. And then you'll have yourself a sweet little rig like this. Another thing that bringing the ride height down did was it straightened out the driveline, which relieves a lot of the pressure and tension on the driveline because it's not at such a hard angle. And that's definitely going to improve the longevity or the life of that driveline. We go ahead and drive this thing with two hands for a little bit and see what it can actually do. So I will meet you back at the garage and we'll wrap this video up. So that was super fun, and this thing performed and held up really well. Nothing broke. I was out there for a couple hours, you know, driving on some really rough terrain, and everything held up well and everything performed really, really well. You know, even the battery lasted the whole time and never went dead on me. So for the price, I couldn't be happier with this little truck. And I might even do some more upgrading to it. I'm definitely going to add a driver, and I'm definitely going to paint it. And I just want to say thank you if you're still watching. You know, thanks for watching the whole video. I also wanted to say thank you very much to all my subscribers. And if you found this video helpful or enjoyable, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. And make sure you smash that bell to get notified of my next videos. I wasn't really planning on upgrading it much more, but I just opened this drawer, and I used to keep my WPL stuff in here. And I got some really nice metal axles in here. I've also got some portals. And I just never installed any of this stuff because the other one was such a piece of crap. So I might have to upgrade more than just the paint job. Make sure you check back for those videos.